been in this pandemic, when first the lockdown, I was out there busy on a project. I decided to swing home. And as soon as I got home, the president announced a lockdown. It meant that good holiday. But knowing us as journalists, I mean, you sit down for 3-4 days and you're like, what can we do? And so this is what led me to, yeah.
So that's what stoked your interest in wanting to pursue this story.
Yeah.
Let's consider the fact that already on social media, I'm sure you've been following the discussion since it was first premiered on YouTube and then subsequently on conventional media. People were asking how come this is the path ANAS has chosen when you're noted for bigger, groundbreaking investigative pieces.
I presume people want to say that bring down the politicians. But look, if you go into history, you realize that these are stories I do. I mean, my allegiance is to the general public and not people's interest. You know, you ask yourself that big question, that how many people does this story impact on? How does it affect their life? You see, a journalist is that one who can, within a space of a pandemic, you are telling me that I should forget about everything about the pandemic, go because of your interest, because you have a political interest, or because you want to see a politician fall. I should just follow my instinct. When my grandmother is thinking of how to cure himself from a pandemic, when things that are supposed to be for the general public are being stolen by people, tell me, which is important to you as a journalist? Which should be? Is it somebody's parochial interest of assassinating or bringing someone down? Or what will serve the general public and put us in good light? For me, I'm motivated by the people. And what the people say is what is important.
I mean, from what I'm deducing, you looked at the current situation we are in, and then your instincts just showed you people could take advantage of this, and you set out to pursue them more or less.
See, the pandemic era put us, or all of us, into a situation where we were too concerned about how to protect our lives.
Right.
We're all in a state of panic, especially when you have a pandemic that you don't have a cure for. And years of experience tells me that this is how criminals thrive. They look at a situation, take advantage of it. So I knew definitely that you were going to find people we are talking about people who are selling drugs to people and they are taking it. The harmful effect on them is quite a big problem. So we are talking about situations where essential health needs that our president has spoken about and distributed are being stolen. We are talking about food that is supposed to be for the poor, people who cannot afford to eat. And I'm talking about then you want to tell me that it is not important? Is that what you think?
The number of people who watched this current one you've just released asked a certain question, which I thought it was necessary to put to you, which was, during the investigative process, did you actually see people consume these products?
Well, if you take Dr. Abdallah, for example, I mean, it's very clear in the evidence and in the film that he says that he had sent some of these products to people in Italy. He's had a lot more people who had come to the shop. Indeed, whilst we were there buying, there were other people who had come to also buy some. And if you saw when the FDA did their own investigation, you saw that when they went there, you would see that there are lots of the items that he had prepared to sell out to people. So the Abdallah brothers was not limited to just preparing a concoction and sitting down and not using it for anything. It was actually meant, if you saw the cost of what they were selling, was not small money. We were talking about $25,000 that they wanted to milk out of me to get those samples. Drugs. Yeah. So again, you want to look at a product like OIFX, which is a product most Ghanaians consume.
Right.
Look, I am a strong believer in traditional medicine because I love herbs. But I want to take herbs and be sure that it can treat what I have.
Right.
And the only way you can measure this is to match it against scientific evidence. Even before my investigation, the FDA itself had done its work. And they found traces of E. coli, which is remnants of feces, in Quack,
yes.
and they issued a public statement out there. The investigation also went to prove that there was some level of mold in there, uncountable, and then some level of phosphine. So it is not just sitting down to just talk, but whatever evidence you collect, at the end of the day, you have to match it against science. And that's what journalism is about.
So we also saw in the documentary that some of the samples you took, you sent them to the FDA, for instance, to find out whether they had sanctioned this to be sold or whether they tested them. And you asked them to test it. And that was when we saw some of the inhuman things that were in it.
Actually, I took the products to the Ghana Standards Authority, and I conducted the test independently of the FDA. But I know that the FDA also conducted their internal test because of the statement, public statement that they issued on COA FX, and the fact that they pulled the drug out of, they recalled it, So that's the sequence of events in that.
Would you agree with persons who say that the job seems simply to overwhelm some of these state agencies, or it is that the state agencies are incapable of pursuing some of these quack persons?
Well, I think that, to be fair to state agencies, it doesn't take, no state agency act as magicians. It takes us, the citizens, to volunteer information to them. You can't expect the FDA to be an octopus, to be everywhere. What is important for me and you, who belong to the fourth estate of the realm, is to hold people accountable, is to help point out some of these misdeeds and report to these state institutions. That will not mean that the state institution will take action. But even if they don't, it should motivate us to keep pushing the frontiers.
And that brings us to the next question, where this is not the first such expose you have released. A number of times it comes out, some action is taken, in other cases very little is seen. How do you keep motivating yourself to keep pursuing some of these stories?
See, some of my investigating has seen people going to jail, and a good number of them have. Right. Others too have not seen a lot of impact. But do we say we want to give up? Look, my training is different. I belong to a different culture. I was trained by the energetic and formidable hands of Abdel Malik Kwekubaku. They don't teach us to give up. They teach us to rock the boat, to keep pushing the frontiers. That should be our job. So the fact that nothing has happened should not induce in us a sense of complacency. It should rather spur us on. You are on your program now. You are leading. Now, in Trends, Twitter, you are leading. I was on another program. If we were not important, why are people watching us?
Not be talking about it.
That is it.
Right. And so what next for Anas? We were told that this is part one of a two-part series. When should we expect the part two?
Yeah,
what does that entail?
It's supposed to come in 2 weeks' time. And you see, to build this country, it takes all of us. And I think that all of us must put our hands on deck. Because I recall when the announcement was being made of the food that should be given to the poor. And I was driving to AMA because my source had told me that while the president was busily announcing where he should go and all that, my source was telling me that the food that the president was available for sale. So I went there and I bought rice, eggs, oil, and all that is supposed to go to the poor. This is what you see in number 2. You also see a hospital, and you see all this cry about lack of PPEs. And to be honest, people would have died because, especially health workers who are on the front line, would have died because perhaps they didn't have PPEs. Then somebody is busily stealing this in this hospital. Let me leave it here, okay. Because
certainly I think quite a number of people will be interested in seeing the part 2 of this. But my last question would have to do with the unfortunate passing of one of your key colleagues, that's Ahmed Swali. What kind of impact has his passing had on your profession?
It's been a difficult moment. It's a very unfortunate event, and I'm affected. The family of Ahmed Swali is affected. We always miss him. One thing Ahmed usually would say to me is that, boss, if you should lose your life in this fight, I will not give up. I'll push on. But if I should lose my life, please, please don't give up, because whatever you do is very necessary for society. Look, the bad guys would always look for us. They will always insult us. They will go to places, mention names. At the end of the day, the good thing about this country is our democracy. The courts are there.
Right.
And the evidence that you can see, all the people who went lying about us, today look at them in court. It's just a matter of having patience and letting time doing the talking.
So in 2 weeks we should expect, is it also titled Corona Quacks Part 2? Or?
I want to keep that. And then it will come, and I can assure you, you will like
groundbreaking.
it. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Anas Arumeya. Anas is investigative journalist. And if you go to our website, 3news.com, you see details of the latest revelation by Anas, Corona Quacks. And that is also trending because we aired it here on TV3 and on our social media platforms. That's how we bring the bulletin to a close. There is more news on our website, 3news.com.